on Mercury. I'm Mary Ann Bailey with the Secretariat of the Minamata Convention, and I'm joined today by many of my colleagues at the Secretariat. Your host for the WebEx session is Shariful Islam, and technical support is provided by our colleague Pablo Garmon. And you can find how to reach technical support or any other support in the chat. And in the next slide, we have a lot to cover today, so we'll move along quite quickly. And this is the division of topics between yesterday's session and today's session. The topics are, it's not a repetition each day of the same topics. So I just want to explain that and also explain that these topics are not presented in the order in which they will come up at the COP or are presented in the provisional agenda. They are just based on the best distribution of our staff resources and ability to speak to these topics and the length of time we want to spend on each of them with you. So as we move quickly through the day 2 topics on the right-hand side of your screen, I want to note that at the end of each topical presentation, we will stop and take any questions you might have. You can put your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand and speak. If there is quite a large number of questions or discussion points, I will take my moderator privilege and step in and suggest that we'll need to move on, because we do have so many things that we want to present to you today, so many topics. Shortly after today's session, we will upload both days' presentations to our website, and you will also be able to find those on the YouTube channel of the Minamata Convention. Today, just as we were yesterday, we're really pleased that the president of the 5th Conference of the Parties, Claudia Dumitru of Romania, has joined us. And if she's already online, I would like to invite her to just say a few words to our audience today. Claudia, are you there? I might have been moving a little too quickly, so let me just check. Okay, so we'll get back to that in just a few moments. And let me just close that. Okay, so on this slide, you can see that the Secretariat has been quite busy already preparing for COP-5. COP-5 takes place here in Geneva from the 30th of October to the 3rd of November of this year, so really right around the corner. As of the 3rd of July, the registration invitations were sent out, and the deadline for registration for the COP is the 29th of September, or if you're a sponsored delegate, that would be the 1st of September. So tomorrow. But for most of our COP participants, the registration deadline is the 29th of September. As of the 15th, I think, of August, we have already uploaded our budget documents to the website. I'll talk more about the documents soon. And we will have yesterday and today's document briefing sessions, but we also have a number of deep dive information sessions that are being planned for you. Those will be online, as well as an online budget forum for parties. And we're also starting, as of next week, our regional meetings. So we do have a lot of things to do. In fact, it was quite difficult even to schedule the briefings for yesterday and today because not only our busy schedule at the Secretariat, but we know that all of you are busy with multiple multilateral meetings and engagements. So we thank you for your time here today. In the next slide, we want to show you our tentative schedule of work in plenary for the COP. This tentative schedule of work is designed to allow maximum time for the plenary to consider and deliberate and adopt items with interpretation into the UN languages, of course, in plenary. It's also designed to take into account the potential time that would be required to meet in smaller groups on some agenda items, in which there would be no interpretation into UN languages in those smaller groups, in contact groups. It's designed to ensure that no more than one group works alongside the plenary, or only two groups working concurrently once the plenary is adjourned. And then finally, it's designed to ensure that draft decisions are finalized in time for the program of work and budget group to consider them before the adoption of the budget on Friday. In the next slide, you can see the expanded schedule of work. This shows the Sunday meetings, as well as the Sunday meetings, including the meeting of the Bureau and the regional meetings. We are planning to have a briefing on the Sunday from the co-chair of the implementation and compliance, or sorry, the chair and the new chair of the implementation and compliance committee and our executive secretary on the implementation and compliance committee and its deliberations on the national reporting. And then there will be a couple of other in-person events during the week, as well as knowledge labs, and of course, Bureau meetings and regional meetings in the mornings. So we will give a lot more information as time goes by on those events, as well as the knowledge labs. Now, in the next slide, we can turn to the documents, which is what you're really here to hear about. Here you can see how to find them on our website. The budget documents, I made a mistake earlier. The budget documents have been available since 31st of July. And in addition, we're already uploading a number of advanced English versions of non-budgetary documents. And our deadline for posting all the COP documents is in the 6 UN working languages is the 18th of September. But we do expect to have most documents available for the regional meetings well in advance of that deadline. So you can see that you can go to the COP-5 website. You can navigate there from our homepage or from the decision-making tab, and you can find the documents that way. In the next slide, we have the provisional, here's first is the list of documents about the documents. So we have the provisional agenda, we have the tentative schedule of work, we have an information document that serves as a reference guide to the documents that have been prepared and organized per agenda item. Information document 2 gives an overview of information provided by the parties to the convention. This covers things like the status of ratifications, notifications from parties, national reports, and other pertinent information. And information document 38 sets out the scenario note and the proposed arrangements for how the COP will be conducted. So at this time, I would like to to note here the provisional agenda. You can see it on your screen here. You can also find it already uploaded to our COP document website. So as I said earlier, the topics that we're taking up today to give you information on the the specific documents prepared per these agenda items are not going in this order. But this is the order of the provisional agenda. So at this time, I will be very happy if Claudia Dumitru is available to give us a few words as our COP-5 president. Claudia, over to you, if you're ready. I guess we're having some technical difficulties there. Okay, let us get, oh, there you are. Wonderful. Thank you, Claudia.
I'm so sorry, Marianne. It was an emergency, so I had to have a chat with my boss. But now I'm here.
No problem.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And as I said yesterday, I'm very happy that you had time to prepare this 2 days with us, with the members and with the parties. And in my capacity as the president of the 5th COP, I really encourage all the parties to get very much engaged in the preparation and of course during the COP. I do have the feeling that it's going to be a very successful meeting. And as I said yesterday also, I know now why Minamata is so successful, because all the focal points and all the people that are working have actually a very huge advantage being in this field for so long and being involved in the other conventions, and the background is very useful. So from my personal point of view, I think we are the most, let's say, fast convention by now. We have 170 something parties, and starting some days ago, we have Ukraine with us, which is a nice surprise. And I extend my congratulations to the colleagues from Ukraine that they managed to do wonderful things, having in mind their not so easy life. And this will be an incentive for the rest of the parties to accelerate the process of accession, because if they can do it, everybody can do it. So I think I'm going to stop now, but I wish you a very nice webinar, and I hope to see some of you in the regional meeting in Yerevan and of course in Geneva. I'm counting on you, and all I can say is that I'm going to do my best to represent and to conduct the meeting in the best manner possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for those inspiring words. Yes, we are well on our way in the march towards universal membership, and we really hope we keep increasing at the rate we've been increasing, because it's wonderful to be already over 140 parties. And we're really pleased to be working with you, Claudia, to make this COP a success. So thank you very much. And at this point in our agenda, I think I can hand over to my colleague Lara, who's going to talk briefly about a couple of organizational matters, and then we'll move on from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne, and hello, everyone. My name is Lara Ognibene. I'm a legal officer with the Secretariat, and I will present a couple of slides today. The first one is on election of officers. And this is a matter that will be considered under agenda item 2C of the provisional agenda. The relevant document is document 5/1/2 on election of officers. So as indicated in the document, COP-5 is to elect the COP-6 Bureau in accordance with the rules of procedure of the COP. No elected officer may serve on the Bureau for more than 2 consecutive terms. To that end, 2 nominations from each UN regional group should be submitted to the Secretariat no later than the second day of COP-5. Also, in accordance with the rules of procedure and past practice, for the purposes of regional rotation, the president of COP-6 is expected to be elected from among the Latin American and Caribbean states. Then COP-5 is also to elect for 2 terms 6 new members of the Implementation and Compliance Committee to replace those members whose period of office is about to expire. Pursuant to paragraph 5 of the rules of procedure, and of rule 3, my apologies, of the rules of procedure of the committee, a member is not to serve for more than 2 consecutive terms. Again, nominations from each UN regional group should be submitted to the Secretariat no later than the 2nd day of COP-5. And finally, COP-5 is also to confirm, based on the nominations received by the regional groups, 10 members of the governing board of the specific international program for the following term, to serve from the closure of COP-5 until the closure of COP-6. And again, no member is to serve on the governing board for more than 2 consecutive terms. Moving on to the next slide, which is on credentials. I'll give you just some information on how to prepare and submit credentials for COP-5. Credentials for parties to the Minamata Convention and for the head of delegation, alternate representatives, and advisors are to be submitted, are to be issued either by the head of state or government or by the Minister for Foreign Affairs. Samples of credentials are available on our website in all UN languages, so please make use of them if you need to do so. Original credentials must be submitted to the Secretariat no later than 24 hours after the opening of COP-5. You can also send us original copies in advance of the COP. Here you have the mail address of the Secretariat in Geneva, so you can send us directly your original copies, or you can bring your original copies with you at COP-5, and the representatives can leave the copies at the registration desk upon arrival on the first day of the meeting. You can also send us electronic copies of credentials by email so that we can check that everything is in order. And just a final note, the credentials report will be adopted or is expected to be adopted in plenary on Thursday morning. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. And I hand over to my colleague Eisaku for the next slides. Thank you.
Lara. And I'm going to present the agenda item 4B. And if you go back one slide, the title of this agenda item is a bit long, and it is to describe what this item is really about. And I will now explain the components of amendments of Annex A and B and the feasibility of non-Mercury alternatives. And before going into details, my name is Eisaku Toda, and I'm in charge of scientific and technical issues. I advise that the sound is not that good. I think you can hear me, so I will continue. My first slide is a reminder of the provisions of the convention. Article 4 provides for phase out, paragraph 1 and Annex 8, part 1. and other measures, Part 3E and Annex A Part 2. In the current convention text is on data amalgam, and it also provides that any party can propose an amendment to Annex A. Article 5 provides for phase out and other measures, and it also provides for all the amendment. Article 27 provides for the procedure to amend the annexes. The next slide, the Annex A was amended at COP-4 in 2022. The original Annex A Part 1 listed products to be phased out by 2020. 8 products were added with the phase-out deadline of 2024-5. 2 mandatory measures on data amalgam were also added. COP4 also decided to consider at COP5 the phase-out dates of the 4 Mercury products as you see in the table, and to consider adding the production of polyurethane using mercury-containing catalyst to Part 1 of Annex B, which is for phase-out.
Isaku, can I interrupt for a moment? It seems like there's maybe a little lag time in your sound and video. So maybe if you turn off the camera, it might be a little bit clearer, even though we like to see you. Let's try that.
Try. Okay. So sorry about this. Since I'm on mission to Japan and I'm presenting from Japan, perhaps it takes the signal to travel to Europe. Sorry about this. So I think it is better.
Yes, it is. It is better, and maybe when you take a break, we'll check some other options. But keep going, please. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the next, I'm going to the next slide, and there are a number of documents for agenda item 4B, as you see on the right left-hand column. And the first one, document 5/4, is about the matters for the consideration of the COP pursuant to the COP4 decision 4/3, as I mentioned just now. The document is an outcome of the work of the Secretariat to invite the submission of information and collect information otherwise, as requested in decision MC 4/3. The document consists of an introduction, 3 substantive part, and suggested action by COP. The first substantive part is about phase-out dates of mercury products, and it summarizes information submitted by parties and stakeholders of mercury products for which COP5 is to consider phase-out dates. The second part is polyurethane production, and also it summarizes the information provided and collected. And the third part is short report on the technical and economic feasibility of mercury-free alternatives for the production of vinyl chloride monomer and sodium or potassium methylates or ethylates. One thing to note here is that for these 2 processes, Annex B Part 2 provides that parties are not to allow the use of those processes 5 years after the COP has established that mercury-free alternatives have become economically and technically feasible. Submissions and other collected information are available in INF 5, and submitted information was presented at Minamata online session in March this year. The next slide. This slide explains the other information documents under this agenda item, and note that document 5/5 will be introduced a bit later. Firstly, INF 3 presents information on the implementation status of 2020 phase-out deadlines, a global workshop on the phase-out deadlines held in June 2023 with the financial support of the European Union and other activities to support the implementation of this deadline. Second info document is in 4. It presents information on the entry into force of the Annex A amended at COP 4.2. For some parties, the amendment will only enter into force after they ratify the amendment, and some parties may notify the depository that they cannot accept the amendment. This document will be issued after 28th of September 2023, the expiry of 1 year from the date of the communication by the depository of the adoption of the amendment. So the next info stop is the suggested actions. The COP may wish to consider a decision which may include the following: an agreement on the phase-out dates for the 4 mercury products listed in paragraph 5 of decision MC4/3. A decision element based on the further consideration to add with the phase-out date the production of polyurethane using mercury-containing catalyst to Part 1 of Annex B to the Convention. A decision element based on its consideration of whether mercury-free alternatives for 2 processes listed in Part 2 of Annex B to the Convention have become technically and economically feasible. I will move on to the next slide because this is also about the item 4B. The document 5/5 is about proposals for amendments to Annex A. Pursuant to Articles 26 and 27, the proposals received from the Botswana and Burkina Faso were circulated to the parties 6 months in advance of COP-5 at the end of April, and have been available on the COP-5 document webpage. However, these proposals were also made available as meeting document 5/5. The document 5/5 explains the provisions of these amendment articles and presents the 3 amendment proposals received from Botswana and Burkina Faso on behalf of the Africa region. The annex to the document tabulates, together with the mercury products for which COP decided to consider the phase-out date at COP-5. As you see on at the bottom of the page, it is very small, but I just include this to show what it looks like. And then the document explains the process once an amendment has been adopted and presents a suggested action by the COP. The next slide is just the info stop. So the COP may wish to consider the proposed amendments, and we are not going into details because these proposals were presented at Minamata online session in June 2023. So in a sense, the deep dive session has already been done. So I think I will stop to see whether there's any question or seeing no hand. I think I will hand over to Maria.
Thank you, Izaku. If there are no questions on that set of topics, we're sorry for the technical difficulties with respect to the sound quality from such a long distance. We'll move on then to the next topic, which is item 4G on financial resources and mechanism. Next slide, please. Oh, we do have a hand up. I'm sorry, I missed that. Shall we? I can't quite see who it is. I need to have some support here to call on whoever has raised their hand. Oh, is it Ram? Please go ahead. Ram, if you're able to unmute, you can pose your question. Ah, maybe we've taken care of it in the chat. Okay. All right. Let's Ram, if we skipped over you, we'll get back to you at a later point in the briefing. Okay. So moving on to financial resources and mechanism. This is item 4G, and in this slide, I just wanted to provide you with an overview of the three topics and the documents provided for each. So this agenda item covers the update on the JEF, the overall report of the SIP. So those are the two parts of our financial mechanism per Article 13. And then this agenda item also covers the review of the financial mechanism. So in the next slide, we'll start going into detail on each of these topics. And I would like to note that we will have a deep dive information session on financial resources and mechanism for more information. Next slide, please. So a very important element of the COP, each COP, is the report of the Council of the Global Environment Facility to the COP. So we also provide a secretariat update on the JEF in its role as part of our financial mechanism. And in that role, the JEF operates under the guidance of the COP, which was adopted at COP1. And so the executive summary of the report of the JEF Council is provided in the add document to this meeting document, and it describes the JEF programming on Mercury from July 2021 through June 2022. You may notice that that's a rather shorter period than our previous JEF reports to the COP. And that's because it was decided that if we adjust it this time, we'll be a little bit more in sync with the various JEF replenishment periods. And we will be able to provide, the JEF would provide a broader date range in the future reports to the COP. So those reports always talk about responsiveness to guidance, any evaluations relevant to the portfolio, and cooperation between our Secretariat and JEF Secretariat. In the next slide, I want to note that both those that document, our update and the Add 1 executive summary, should be read in conjunction with the full report, which will be set out in INF 14. And the JEF has generously offered to translate that full report into French and Spanish. So we will have it in the three languages soon. And so as you may recall, negotiation of JEF 8 was completed in April of last year. We had a very good, strong replenishment for the Mercury allocation of $269 million for the JEF 8 period. And in its report to the COP, the JEF talks about the reporting period, but also reflects on the full allocation of JEF 7, which was an allocation of $206 million for the set of activities you see listed there. And in the next slide, I would like to hand it over to my colleague Irene Rizzo, who provides support to the full management of the specific international program. Irene.
Thank you so much, Marian. Hello to all our participants. My name is Irene Rizzo, as Marian has just said, and I'm the Junior Professional Officer at the Secretariat, working specifically on the SIP. I will present now the second part of the financial mechanism, and that is the specific international program to support capacity building and technical assistance. And the relevant documents are, as you can see in the left-hand side of the slide, 5/11 on the overall report on the SIP, document 5/11/add1, which is on the governing board of the specific international program. And then relevant information documents are IN15, which is on the governing board of the SIP, again, the meeting reports, and IN16, which contains the midterm evaluation of the SIP, the report of the midterm evaluation of the SIP. So starting with the document 5/11, this contains the Secretariat overall report on all activities and outcomes under the SIP following COP4. And the document in particular describes the support that was provided by the Secretariat to the SIP. And for example, regarding the administration of the specific trust fund, resource mobilization, but also communication and outreach activities, and the implementation and monitoring of all our 24 SIP projects approved to date. It also describes the work of the governing board of the SIP since COP4, and then it provides an overview of the status of implementation of the 24 projects approved in the first, then in the second, and in the third round of applications to the SIP that we had to date. And there's also a section, as usual, on the status of the specific trust fund, which includes all the contributions and pledges received to the fund, and the section on the midterm evaluation of the SIP. I will speak more about that later, but just to say here that this section outlines the work that has been done to conduct the midterm evaluation, which was undertaken by an external consultant. And the document also provides some information on the scope of this work and the conclusions and recommendations. If I may have the next slide, please. Perfect. Okay, so this slide is about the work of the governing board of the SIP since COP4. And you will see that document 11/add1 contains 3 annexes. The first presents some reflections of the governing board on the midterm evaluation of the SIP. And the board was very pleased to note that the SIP was found to be addressing the needs of the parties through technical support, but also capacity building that is needed for these parties to meet their obligations under the convention. And that the board also found that the projects demonstrated was happy to consider that the projects demonstrated effectiveness and efficiency and high prospects for sustainability. The Annex 2 of this document contains the executive summary of the report on the midterm evaluation of the SIP. And this was provided by the external consultant, and is in the document has provided. And Annex 3 outlines the reflections of the co-chairs of the governing board of the SIP on the 4th round of applications to the SIP. And this includes that the contributions to date to the specific trust fund have not yet allowed the board to launch the 4th round of applications because they are not sufficient yet to launch a new round. And in this part of the document, the board also calls for new and additional contributions to enable the SIP to remain fully operational. Then the information document 15, Annex 1, contains the report of the 7th meeting of the governing board that took place in November last year. And the report of the 8th meeting of the governing board that took place yesterday will be available online soon on our website. And this is also indicated in the INF document. You will find a link to the place on the website where you will find the report as soon as finalized. If we can move to the next slide. This slide is more specific on the midterm evaluation of the SIP. And about, of course, INF/16, the information document that I mentioned earlier, and that contains the full report of the midterm evaluation of the SIP. And as you may recall, the governing board of the SIP, at its 6th meeting in August 2021, made provisions for a midterm evaluation of the SIP, which was designed to be completed in 2023, which is the year that marks the midpoint of the initial period of the SIP, that is 10 years. So the evaluation was conducted between October last year and May 2023 and assessed the SIP in relation to a number of criteria like strategic relevance, design, implementation. You can see them on the slide, and provided also performance ratings for the SIP. And the evaluation developed a mapping and analysis of the stakeholders involved in the SIP, that is the stakeholder analysis, and the draft theory of change and the SIP results framework. The SIP results framework in particular includes 1 outcome and 7 outputs, along with indicators that can be used to frame the results achieved by the SIP. And the evaluation also provided 11 conclusions with the related recommendations for the continuous improvement of the program. And you can see at the bottom of the slide some of the conclusions that were presented by the consultant, expert consultant that conducted the midterm evaluation. The consultant concluded that the operations of the SIP to date have been conducted efficiently. She also said that the support provided by the SIP is clearly contributing to strengthening the capacity of parties to meet their obligations under the convention. And she said she found that the resource mobilization is needed, particularly considering the critical financial situation of the SIP. Of course, there are more conclusions and recommendations provided in the report that you can find, as I said, in INF/16. Let me just pause here to see if there are any questions on the SIP. I see some questions related to dental amalgam, and those will be answered by my colleagues in the chat or orally. I don't see any questions on the SIP at this stage.
Okay,
So
we can
hand over to Marian.
Yeah, thank you. We can move on to the third set of documents in this topic under this agenda item, and that's the review of the financial mechanism. So the mandate for the review of the financial mechanism is, of course, from the convention text, but for this particular second review of the financial mechanism, there was a decision at COP-4 to begin the work towards the second review of the financial mechanism according to the terms of reference adopted by decision MC4/7 and its annex. So the review covers both the JEF and the SIP, and it covers the period from August 2019 to July 2022, inclusive of any activities and efforts that were completed within that time frame. So the review report is available, and the document 5/12 provides a description of all the work undertaken for the second review, including the report for the second review, the submissions process, and suggested steps towards the third review of the financial mechanism, should the parties be ready to start working in that direction. Annex 1 of this document presents a draft decision, and Annex 2 provides the executive summary of the report on the second review of the financial mechanism. So the information called for in the terms of reference for the second review and received by the Secretariat is set out in the information document that accompanies this, along with the full report of the second review of the financial mechanism. So this will be considered fully by the COP, and in the next slide, we can see the suggested action for the COP. Based on the document prepared for the review of the financial mechanism. The COP may wish to complete the second review of the financial mechanism based on the report for that time period. And the COP may want to adopt a decision that could include such things as welcoming the 8th replenishment of the JEF Trust Fund, increased efforts towards augmenting the funding in the specific trust fund, communicating the results of the second review and its report to the JEF Council and the SIB Governing Board, providing input relative to programming directions and resource allocations for JEF 9. This is really important because the JEF 9 replenishment discussions will start well in advance of our next COP. So they will begin in early 2025, I believe. And of course, preparations by the JEF Secretariat will begin in advance of that. So the voice of the COP relative to JEF 9 will be very, very important at this stage. Also, implementation of JEF 8, the COP may want to articulate some points regarding our implementation deadlines or priorities, as well as perhaps integration across focal areas, including biodiversity. As you may recall, JEF 8, the replenishment and its programming directions has quite a strong focus on integration and really mutual support of various MEAs, including the Climate Convention and the Biodiversity Convention. The COP may want to urge parties to work through their JEF operational focal points at the national level to make sure that we're making full and good use of the allocation in JEF 8 for the Minamata Convention. And then the COP may also want to consider the timing of future reviews and may want to request the Secretariat to prepare draft terms of reference that the COP could consider at COP 6. We will have a deep dive information session on financial resources and mechanism, covering all these documents in greater detail on the 8th of September. So please register for that if you're interested. And at this time, I can take any questions you might have on the financial resources and mechanism topic. I am not seeing anything immediately. Am I missing? Oh, we do have a hand. Please, if you've raised your hand, please go ahead and unmute. I think it's Michael, if you wish to raise a question or comment. I don't know if Michael's able to unmute. Michael, please feel free to put your question or comment in the chat as well. Thank you. Okay, hearing no further questions, I believe we can move on. I'm going to hand off to my colleague, Manuela.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's nice to see another full house today. For those who are not here or who don't know me, I'm Manuela. I'm responsible for the work on the Convention on Effectiveness Evaluation, as well as the linkages with biodiversity and engagement with indigenous peoples. Today, I'm going to be speaking to you about effectiveness evaluation. You will notice that this is quite a large item, agenda item, but we will glance relatively quickly over the documents, and that's because we will have a more in-depth session later on focused, dedicated to the effectiveness evaluation. I'll give you the dates in a second. It's the 14th of September, but I'll give you the time in a minute or so. So there are 8 documents that are relevant to this agenda item. 3 of them are working documents. It's actually 1 working document with 2 addenda, and that's it's document 516. But before I go into the document itself, let me just remind you that Article 22 of the Convention sets out that the COP must evaluate the effectiveness of the Convention no later than 6 years after the entry into force of the convention, thereafter at regular periods to be decided by the COP. We saw at COP 4 that there is a decision on its 411 on starting the first effectiveness evaluation, agreeing on the framework, established the open-ended scientific group to work on monitoring and emissions and releases. So that has all happened already at COP4, but there are some outstanding issues. The COP agreed to further consider the timeline for the first effectiveness evaluation, as well as the TOR of the effectiveness evaluation group, and specifically the issue of the membership of the group. So going back to our document for COP5, we have document 516. It's a relatively short document, at least the main document. It has an introduction, an overview of the intersessional work, primarily on the open-ended scientific group that we often call as OESG. So if you're not familiar with this abbreviation, it stands for the open-ended scientific group. And the document also details the intersessional work to refine the indicators. That was all in decision 411 from the previous COP. Finally, the last section of this main document contains proposed action with an annex detailing a draft decision that the COP may wish to consider. We'll get back to that in a second. Then, as I mentioned, there are two addenda. One is on indicators. The other one is on a progress report of the OESG. You have the sections detailed on the screen. I will just note that the annex to document 16 addendum 1 contains the draft indicators. These will be revised as explained in the document, and these will be up for consideration by the COP. The progress report of the OESG is to keep the COP informed with the view to providing and detailing the way forward, including the expected results and the schedule for further work. And it's expected, as detailed in the COP4 decision, that the outcomes of and conclusions of the OESG will be submitted to the EEG, so the Effectiveness Evaluation Group. If I could have the next slide, please. I also mentioned that there were a number of information documents. They are on the screen. Very briefly, information 22, document 22 will contain an executive summary of the report on trade, supply, and demand of Mercury. This is one of the documents that the COP has tasked the Secretariat with to develop it. It's the full draft of the report will be available through our website. Document INF 23 it concerns a synthesis report of the information contained in the national reports that are submitted pursuant to Article 22 of the Convention. And it has two annexes. One is detailing the next steps in this process, and the next two is a draft of the actual synthesis of information contained in the national reports. And it links with the indicators, with the draft indicators. INF 24 are the actual plans developed by the OESG so far. I see that there is a typo in the screen in front of you. It does not detail all the annexes. My apologies for this. I think it was a syncing problem with the document, but I can tell you that INF 24 has 3 annexes. It includes the plan for monitoring, for data monitoring, the plan for emissions and releases summary, and finally steps towards developing the plan for data analysis, which is where everything will come together under the OESG. Moving on to INF 25, it contains a non-exhaustive list of documents that will support the first effectiveness evaluation. And this is built in accordance with with paragraph 3 of Article 22, which lists categories of information that may support the effectiveness evaluation. And these include monitoring information and other reports, Both reports and information pursuant to Article 21 and Article 15, as well as reports detailing financial assistance, technology transfer, and capacity building. So that information is contained in INF 25, but it's not a non-exhaustive list of documents. Finally, INF 37, and this will come very late, just before COP. It is an update of the latest information regarding the work of the OESG. We foresee that these will contain some details about a call for data submission that we intend to send out very soon to parties and other stakeholders who wish to contribute with data to this process. If I could have the next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, the first annex of the main document, 516, contains a proposed draft decision that the COP may wish to consider. It's a fairly short one. The first element is an agreement of when the outcomes of the first effectiveness evaluation will be considered, in other words, which meeting of the COP that should be. It may take a note of the progress made by the OESG, as well as, very importantly, establish the effectiveness evaluation group, which I mentioned before has not been established yet because there was that issue of the membership that was still outstanding. So we hope that the EEG will be established in accordance with agreed terms of reference. Another element that the COP may wish to consider and adopt are the indicators for the first effectiveness evaluation, and finally, to request the Secretariat to continue supporting this process. As you will see at the bottom right of the screen, there will be what we call a deep dive session. It is a session dedicated to certain topics that require more discussion, and this will be on the effectiveness evaluation on the 14th of September from 2 to 2:45, and that's Western European time, so Geneva time. If there are any questions, I may take them now or later or through the chat. Thank you. And back to Datsuisaku, I believe, unless there are any questions. Okay, I see.
You, Manuela, I think the sound quality is better. Or...
It is, Isaku. It's quite good now.
Okay, thank you. I think that's the microphone setting. So now I'm going to the next one. Next slide. The emissions of mercury, and the emission of mercury to air is the main pathway of for mercury to affect the global environment by being transported globally. But Article 8 did not come up on the agenda after COP1 adopted all the guidance that the Convention text requests the COP to adopt. In view of the importance of Article 8, we included this in the COP5 agenda item with document 5/7, which provides an overview of measures taken by parties vis-a-vis the different deadlines on national plans, new sources, existing sources, and emission inventories based on the Article 21 national reports. So I think I will a bit speed up the next slide. I'm going to the next slide. So that the COP may wish to encourage the parties to advance their efforts to implement Article 8, taking note of the implementation deadlines. Call upon parties that have chosen to prepare a national plan but have not yet submitted the plan to submit it as soon as possible. Encourage parties with experience in using the guidance adopted at COP1 to provide the Secretariat with information on such experience, and request the Secretariat to provide an update to COP6. And the related draft decision is set out in the document 5/8. So we go. I will move to the next agenda item. Releases of mercury, or E. So Article 9 defines relevant sources as significant anthropogenic point source of release to land and water as identified by a party that is not addressed in other provisions of the convention. And the Article 9 provides that each party shall identify the relevant point source categories in 3 years. Take measures to control releases, establish of inventory releases from relevant sources in 5 years. And also Article 8 and Article 9 provides that COP shall adopt guidance to two pieces of guidance. One is about BAT-BEP, best available technique and best available environmental practice, and the methodology for preparing inventory. The inventory guidance was adopted at COP4, and the same decision requested the group of technical experts to develop the draft guidance on BAT-BEP. The document 5/8 sets out the draft guidance on BAT-BEP. I'm not going into technical details. I don't think we have time on that, but the content table of contents looks like the box on the bottom left. And also INF 11 sets out for information purposes technical information on BAT-BEP. I will then move on to the next item. The sorry. Yes, I think I should have explained the action. So back 2 slides, I think. So the COP may wish to consider an adoptive BAT-BEP guidance and take invite parties to use it and request the secretary to collect relevant information. So the next, I will go to the next agenda item, waste for F. So the paragraph Article 11, paragraph 2 defines the mercury waste as waste consisting of mercury or mercury compounds. We call it category A, and waste containing mercury or mercury compounds, category B, and waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compound, we call it category C. And this definition excludes overburden waste rock and tailings from mining, except from primary mercury mining, unless they contain mercury or mercury compounds above threshold defined by COP. So as you see, there are different sets of thresholds that COP is expected to develop. Next slide, please. Document 5/7 is about the establishment of mercury waste threshold, and in the decision MC/3/5 defined waste waste consisting of mercury compounds, category A, and waste containing mercury and mercury compounds, category B. And the COP4 decision 4/6 defined 2-tier threshold for mine tailings. Tier 1 on total mercury content and Tier 2 with leach testing, and mandated the group of technical experts established by decision 2/2 to develop a report to COP with the goal of recommending and facilitating decision on waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds, category C, and develop a guidance document on test methods to be used for Tier 2 testing for mine tailings. The group of technical experts met in February 2023 with financial contribution from Japan, and reviewed the information submitted by parties and developed a report to COP-5. The report was posted on the convention website, and I forgot to mention that there was an Minamata online session in July this year. So in a sense, a deep dive session was already done. So if we go to the next slide, what the expert group report says, it proposes to establish a single threshold, but it didn't reach a consensus on the number. The group proposed three possible numbers: 25, 15, 10 milligram per kilogram total concentration of mercury, and then noting that the parties may choose not to use this threshold with certain conditions, and if they parties choose this approach, then the secretariat will collect that information about these different approaches. For the rest, I think I mentioned the rest of the contents in the proposed action section. So I will move to the next slide. So and then I think the second mandate was to develop guidance document on the mine tailings testing and key considerations: liquid solid ratio 10:1, test pH neutral, and test duration not exceeding 24 hours. So this is the technical documents that the group is developed. So the next one is, I think, my last slide, the suggested action for the COP. The COP may wish to agree on the threshold value for waste contaminated with mercury or mercury compounds, category C, noting the three presented the possible values. And the COP may wish to take a decision establishing the total concentration mercury threshold and providing for parties not using this threshold value and deciding to review the threshold at COP-7, extending the mandate of the group of technical experts, inviting parties to use the guidance document on the test methods for Tier 2 testing, mine tailings, and calling on parties in a position to do so to provide support, inviting Basel Convention COP to update the technical guidelines as appropriate. I will stop here, and I will, if I would be happy to respond to any question, perhaps thinking of the time, I think we do it in the chat. So I hand it to my colleague.
Yeah, thank you, Isaac.
Sorry, yeah, please.
Yeah, my name is Sandra Rücker, and I'm the administrative officer of the convention, and I'll take you through the financial rules, the document on financial rules, and also the program of work and budget. So in terms of financial rules, that's document 517. COP1 in decision MC 110 adopted the financial rules, but with some bracketed text. And then the following COPs considered the text, but always deferred the consideration of the bracketed text to the next COP, and now it is being deferred to COP-5. So COP-5 is then to consider and agree on the outstanding issues and adopt a decision on the bracketed text, which is paragraph 3E of Rule 5 on contributions, on the measures to take when payment schedules are not jointly decided on or respected. And then there's some bracketed text in the annex. So paragraph 2 of the annex to the financial rules on the procedure for allocation of funding from the special trust fund for facilitating the participation of parties in COP meetings. And also in paragraph 5 on the preparation of a list of sponsored delegates by the head of the secretariat. So if we move on to the next topic, the program of work and budget, I've just made 2 brief slides because as you can see, there will be a deep dive session on 11th of October with more details. So I'm keeping it short in this forum here. So the main documents to be considered is 523, the main work and budget document, including the 2 funding scenarios for 2024-25. And then we have also in 35 the information on financial matters, which includes a report on the budget implementation of the current and the previous biennium, and then also the status of contributions to our 3 trust funds. So that's the general trust fund, the core budget, then also the voluntary funding in the special trust fund, and we have the specific trust fund, the SIP. And then we have to complement the document 523, the main budget document, we have the document 36, the budget activity fact sheets with all the details on each budget activity. So in terms of process, all parties who are registered will have already received an invitation to participate in the online budget forum, which will go online on Monday, on the 4th September, and we'll keep it till just after the online budget information session on 11th of October, meaning it'll be there on 13th of October. All questions you will put there, all comments you will put, we will answer as the Secretariat. As always, during COP-5, we expect to have a budget contact group, and again for parties only, and also the budget forum is for parties only. Just to be clear. And of course, as always, it's in English, and it's to propose the draft decision, including the budget and the assessed contributions for the 24-25 biennium. And the budget contact group normally also clears all other decisions to be adopted by COP-5 in budgetary terms. And then the plenary would consider and adopt the budget decision for COP-5, meaning the entire program of work and budget for 24-25. So on the next slide, I've just put a few highlights because, as I mentioned, there will be the deep dive session. So this time around, as a Secretariat, we really had big challenges to come up with a 0 nominal and the 5% scenario mandated by COP. And one of the main reasons is because of the inflation that we're having at the moment. And inter alia, due to that, there is also an increase in the UN standard salary cost of 4.73%. And since the staff costs are a big part of the budget, it really made things quite challenging to come up with reasonable scenarios for the general trust fund, meaning our core budget. So mainly because of that, in the 0 nominal growth scenarios, we did not manage to include any budget for effectiveness evaluation, and neither for national reporting and gender. So in the 0 nominal growth, all that is budgeted under the special trust fund, which means there would need to be fundraising for that. Then in the 5% scenario, which comes to a total of 8.6 million for the 24-25 biennium. I'm sorry, there's a typo in that. I apologize for that. So in the 5% scenario, the budget for effectiveness evaluation, national reporting, and gender is included. And there is, compared to the current biennium, there is an increase in the executive direction and management. That's where we budget for the staff costs. Because of the increase in UN standard salary costs I've already mentioned. Also, we're including the reclassification of 2 positions to reflect the current duties and responsibilities. And we have also included a new part-time position, a new G5 IT assistant. We could not manage to put in a full-time, so we're at least proposing a part-time position, just to be sure that we're having the in-house technical skills for the day-to-day IT operations, including the digital ecosystem, as to not expose the Secretariat to risks in that area. Then in the 5% scenario compared to the previous biennium, we do have some decreases in costs. So that's if you look at the 2 scenarios, for example, the COP costs, but that's mainly due because in the last biennium, COP4, we had COP4 in two parts, which led to an increase in costs. So for COP5, if you look at just the physical meeting, there will be some increases in costs just because of the same inflation I've mentioned. And there are also, we're budgeting decreases in effectiveness evaluation and national reporting and digital strategy. And for the national reporting and digital strategy, we have budgeted decreases, mainly also because of the proposal of the IT assistant, the part-time IT assistant. Also, one of the other challenges is the P3 program officer for national reporting and effectiveness evaluation. That was also very difficult to fit into the scenarios, just because of the fact that in the previous biennium, that position was partly funded from carry forward funding. So we only found room to include that position at the end of the budget in 2025. So this is just a very brief overview. Like I mentioned, there will be a deep dive session. So, and you can post question in the online budget forum. But if there's any questions you have now, I'll be happy to answer also in the chat, maybe, because just for time reasons. And if not, then I'll pass on to my colleague Lara for the rest to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. So I'll take you through the next couple of slides on international cooperation. International cooperation will be considered under agenda item 5 of the provisional agenda. Relevant documents are listed on the left side of the slide. So the main document is document 21 on international cooperation and coordination, which includes information on activities undertaken by the Secretariat to cooperate and coordinate with other entities, particularly in the chemicals and waste cluster. The report has been prepared by the Secretariat and covers the period from February 2022 to June 2023. Additional information is included always on cooperative activities undertaken by the Secretariat. In the report on enhanced cooperation and coordination between the Secretariat of the Minamata Convention and the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions in document 22, and also in the joint report on cooperation and coordination between the two secretariats of the Minamata and the BRS conventions. And this is a joint document prepared jointly by both secretariats. And this is included in Annex 1 of INF 28. Furthermore, under this agenda item, we will consider reports from other international organizations and bodies that have been reports have been submitted to the Secretariat. You will find them in INF 28, which is the report of the Executive Director of UNEP. INF 31, which contains the report on activities on Mercury of relevant international bodies. We have in INF 32 the report of the Global Mercury Partnership, and in INF 33 an update on SAICM and the intersessional process, considering the strategic approach and the sound management of chemicals and waste beyond 2020. Next slide, please. The document 21 contains a suggested action for the COP. The COP may consider adopting a decision which includes welcoming the opportunity for the Secretariat to become an observer at the meetings of the UN climate change conferences. There are also two bracketed paragraphs on welcoming the adoption of the Beyond 2020 Global Chemicals and Waste Framework by ICCM5, which is to convene only at the end of September. So if the framework is adopted, that this text could be retained in the draft decision. Another point of the draft decision is to request the Secretariat to continue to enhance cooperation coordination with the Secretariat of the strategic approach. This is also pending adoption of the framework by ICCM 5. And also the COP could request the Secretariat to continue and further enhance cooperation coordination with the WHO to support parties' efforts to implement health-related aspects of the convention. I stop here. Thank you very much, and I am available in case you have any questions.
Thanks very much, Laura. We can still take some more questions. I just have a couple more slides to get through to you. And I think it's nice that we wrap up the two-day document briefing with the topic of international cooperation and coordination, because everyone who's tuned in today knows that addressing Mercury is essential really to making progress on the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. So we all do need to work together and join forces to make that happen. We can go now to the next slide. I'd like to, my colleagues can let me know if there are any new questions. I see lots of questions in the chat, so we will get to those. But while we're doing the last few minutes here, I want to again remind you that with our Minamata Online Season 3, not only do we have today's briefings, but we have the 4 deep dive information sessions, one on financial resources and mechanism, one on national reporting, one on ASGM, and one on effectiveness evaluation. And then for parties only, we have a deep dive information session on program of work and budget, which will be towards the end of the period in which the online budget forum is open. So I encourage you to register for any or all of those. And in the next slide, I also want to give you a glimpse at the week of online side events that we'll be holding prior to COP-5. This will be the week of October 9th. And we have found through our experience with COP4 that the online format for side events prior to the COP works quite well. It allows people to not have to divide their time between negotiating sessions and events. And it also allows for robust participation, including of those who cannot make it in person to our COP. So we're really looking forward to this set of side events and hope that you are interested in tuning into those as well. So with that, let me just ask if there are any further questions. I'm going to check to see if we have. It looks like none. Thank you for all the suggestions also we've received in the chat. And again, the presentations from today and from yesterday will soon be uploaded to the convention website, and they'll also be available on the Minamata Convention YouTube channel. So I will just pause here for just a moment in case there's any last questions. And I'm not seeing anybody, sorry. It's been a long couple of days. I'm not seeing any further questions, but we'll stay open for just another minute. But I do thank you all for tuning in today. We hope it's been useful, and we look forward to everybody's engagement at COP-5 and beyond. Please check the chat. There's a few more information points and links provided in the chat before we close up if you want to check those. But otherwise, I think we're done, and I really appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, and next day. Bye-bye.